Hello, my name is Kelly Chorpening and I'm a Fine Art Program Director at Camberwell College of Arts. And I'm really pleased to present to you a conversation today between the artist Hew Locke and curator Kate Macfarlane, who's one of the co-directors at Drawing Room London, where Hew had a show back in 2004. This is an event to mark the achievements of this year's graduating cohort of Camberwell College of Arts Fine Art courses in a very extraordinary year. To introduce our speakers today, Hew Locke is represented in many collections, including the Perez Art Museum, Miami, Tate Gallery, Metropolitan Museum of Art, Brooklyn Museum, Victoria and Albert Museum, Imperial War Museum, and the British Museum. Just last year, at last year's commencement ceremony, he was appointed an honorary doctorate of UAL, and for many years was an associate lecturer.
Not honorary doctor. I haven't reached those heights yet, just a fellow.
And for many years, he was an associate lecturer on the BA painting course at Camberwell. Kate Macfarlane is a founder and co-director of Drawing Room since 2002. This is the only public nonprofit gallery in the UK and Europe dedicated to contemporary drawing. The Drawing Room provides an incredible resource for our students, especially is greatly appreciated, and promotes drawing, its practice, theory, and methodology within contemporary fine art. In 2017, she was curator of Graphic Witness, an exhibition that examined practices that use drawing as a means to evidence current events and spark social change. So these graduates of the courses here at Camberwell in painting, drawing, photography, and sculpture, following the government-imposed lockdown in March, quickly had to adapt their ideas, plans, and processes to home working, with the knowledge that the hallmark event of every art student's experience, the degree show, would not be taking place in June. And this is where I think this is best understood with images, which I will share with you. So here you can see the entrance to the college and many images that you would expect to see in an art school, people gathering together to make work, to discuss it, to have critiques. Students this year also held very ambitious exhibitions at Copeland Gallery in Peckham with very energetic and exciting private views where everybody got to commune and behave collectively towards their ambitions as artists. And then, of course, the contrast was that after the 23rd of March, the studios were left as is. And these images are of the fine art studios since lockdown. They've been this way for 4 months. So in effect, all that energy and activity has kind of gone under the radar. It's become invisible. So this occasion marks this first return to visibility for these students of their work. So this upheaval overlaps with other upheavals in the world. And I think that it's fair to say that these form a little bit of a backdrop of the discussion that we're going to be having here today. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Hew Locke and Kate Macfarlane in conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, from my point of view, this is really, really weird. And I sort of, to be brutally honest, I debated whether to do this or not, because what do you talk about when the world as we know it is over, But what I'm talking about are the way I try to adapt to previous crises and previous problems in my career. The problems that students, and please, you guys I wish you guys all the best, because this is tough times. This is tough times, you know. And to deny that is a lie, because we don't know where the future is. We don't know what the art market will be like. We don't know what arts organizations will be like in the future. But the drawing room will always be there as far as I'm concerned, you know. And so the art world won't disappear. That's the way I see it. It will be different, you know. It won't disappear, you know. And there will be ways to operate in it. How that is not even necessarily yet completely figured out yet, but there will be ways to operate in it.
So Hew, do you want to begin by saying how you operated when you first left college? Because I think some of the first images you're going to share are quite early drawings, when not long after art school. Do you want to?
Yeah. So we pull some of these up, these early images. If the technology will allow. Right. So these
Mercenary series from 97, 98. That's
98, right? Yeah. So, well, the drawing on the left was done out of anger, and I think if I was a student, I'd be quite angry right now for justifiable reason. I read an article by a critic. It was a stupid article, and I decided I was going to kill them. But so that's what this guy on the left is pointing his gun at. What this is about. But what it's about really is, I got a studio. I had a scholarship after I left college. Let me start off at the beginning, right? Okay, I leave college, right, and I'm on the dole. I'm sort of you know, basically going to the unemployment agency, as it was then, job center and stuff like that. And because I had to tell them I was doing something, I had to prove to them I was doing something, I applied for a scholarship, a Wingate scholarship. Now, I applied for it because I had to go to this meeting and say I was doing something to get a job, right? And what's important from a student point of view is that I never would have applied for this scholarship. I just looked at it and thought, right, they're never going to give that for me. I'm just out of college, you know what I mean? That's not for me, you know, to me at all, you know? And I applied, and I bloody got it, you know? And that was amazing. So for 2 years, I had a studio, a scholarship studio, and a stipend of £3,000 a year, which back in those days was a lot of money. And at the end of that, all of a sudden the honeymoon is over, and I was out and I was in trouble, you know. And all I had was 25 sheets of paper to work on. That was it, you know. So I wasn't starving or nothing like that. Don't get me wrong. I was working in a bar and stuff like that. And now, as a recent graduate, you're saying, oh my God, the good old days when you could survive with a small bar job, you know. So the work on the left, the Mercenary series, is directly out of this particular situation, a response to an adverse situation. I haven't got paint. I didn't have money for that, but I had some pastel drawing, I had some charcoal and some pastels. And I haven't got an image of it here, but just following my instinct and just enjoying what I was doing. That's the key. I always whinge on to go on to students about enjoying what I was doing. Just because of that, one of this series is now in the Victoria and Albert Museum collection. And I got lucky with that. Okay.
But also, Hew, drawing is the backbone of your practice in some ways, isn't it? It's something you're always going back to, and it forms everything that you've done. And so, and through it, it's a great tool of research and exploration for you.
Exactly. I mean, it's the basis of everything. And it's just an important, for me personally, it's an important structural thing, you know, because even when I'm starting something, which may not look as if it has drawing in it, there's drawing there, because there'll be small, tiny, scrappy sketches, you know, to make it, to pull it together.
And also these evidence the fact that you were looking back at art history, because Velázquez, Goya,
Yes.
and I think you've looked all through the London Illustrated News as well, haven't you? So you're bringing together imagery sources from many different...
Exactly, sources from all over. I mean, the figure in the image in the middle is a mix of a guerrilla fighter from El Salvador, mixed with the Duke of Monmouth, an old 17th century, I think, print. But it's covered in export signs. I used to write export and everything, because in those days I wasn't deemed to be part of British society. I'd make work and people would say to me, "Where do you come from?" You know, and that it came with a whole bunch of problems. So you're not one of us, you know. And yeah, so it was the height of the YBA time, and it was a very strange time actually for me.
Mm. And then to move on to the other drawing on this slide, Arabian Nights, 2006.
Yeah, that's a fantasy drawing about the war in Iraq. Sort of a yeah, it's just a stream of consciousness thing based about the war in Iraq.
Mm. But it's incredibly powerful, and what's also the way you've filled the entire kind of field, field is amazing. And also what you see going through all of your work later on then is the faces that come out of these layers of imagery.
Yeah. I make work with lots and lots of layers, and that's been something I've been doing for quite a while actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
So is that in a collection now, Hew?
Yes, it's in the Rhode Island Museum collection over in the US.
Mm,
so some of these things are in collections. You can never know whether what you're doing will have some sort of life. You just have to know that you're doing something for yourself, and if you do it with enough enjoyment or pleasure or honesty or whatever, then somebody somewhere, if you're lucky, could pick up on it, you know what I mean? And it's sort of worked out for me really like that, you know.
Great. Should we move on to the next image?
Yeah. Right. And this is another thing of I got tired of there's a background to this work. I just wanted to make work because I was looking on television and all these sort of images of people posing in masks behind symbols and signs, whether it be for a carnival point of view, whether it be for some terrorist purpose or something like that, people against backdrops. And I wanted to do something where I disappeared. I became my work, basically. And before this image here, there's lots of experimentation wearing crappy masks, like the kind of crappy masks that the kind of masks from Texas Chainsaw Massacre type things from, or Eminem wore back in the day and stuff like that. So there are lots of preliminary things to this particular image. And that's me in a big, crazy dress. But it's about doing something, going, well, you know what, like most recent graduates and students thinking, right, I've got this great idea, but I've got to hold off because I haven't got the money for it. And then it's like, and then you hustle around, you apply for grants, and hopefully you get lucky. I got lucky, I got a grant, an Arts Council grant to make this body of work. And it's a series called How Do You Want Me? And basically it was like an appeal out to the art world. It's like, how do you want me? What do you want me to do? I can do this, I can do that. But what do you want me to do for super success? You know what I mean? I will do it, no worries. You know what I mean? I could do anything. And it was also about exotic stereotypes and stuff like that. But it's a built set, and it's and it takes a long time to a 5-minute exposure or something, 3-minute exposure on the camera and stuff like that.
And this is the only one where you're a female, isn't it? A woman portrayed as a woman.
Yes. The others are as different male characters, but I just wanted to have a dress, and I wanted to have a dress which was really weird, and yeah, amazing,
sumptuous series.
Yeah, it sort of worked, and again, it's the whole layering thing in there as well, you know. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the next image?
Sure. Aha. So this is the beginning of the statue stuff, and so I need to explain what this is about. I've been interested in statues in London for years. I've been looking at this, working in this subject for 20 years or so, and I was interested because these are until today. These are everyday things. People walk past them and not pay any attention, not remotely interested. I got interested. Like, well, who are these characters? What are they about? And there was something about there's something that had this weird, very subtle dead weight of history around on my back a bit, you know, with these guys. And so I started looking into these guys. So I started trying to bring out their history and make a comment on them. And the fact that some of them are very dodgy and some of them are more complex and problematic. This here is David Livingstone, and it's a statue outside the Royal Geographical Society, just down the road from the Albert Hall. And this guy was a missionary going to Africa, you know, to convert the heathens and all this kind of stuff. He wasn't an evil man, but then he did cooperate. He did accept help from slave traders. And he was the beginning of the European incursion into Africa full scale. You know, he's the beginning of that. So what I've surrounded him with is all the subsequent wars which took place, which have taken place over decades in the continent of Africa. And he's sitting there as a sort of a person who with all this stuff going on around him. And he is the ultimate definition of that phrase, the white savior.
And when you, as you said at the beginning, that you were looking at these statues when everybody else was just walking past them and ignoring them. Yeah. And the enduring series has come out of the fact that you weren't able to do what you wanted to do initially, which was dress a statue.
Exactly.
But then it's triggered this incredible body of work in which you've continually kind of adapted it, and it's evolved. I mean, here it's an interesting way you've brought together the drawing with the photographic element, so that each of the work in the series takes on quite a different form, doesn't it?
Exactly. And basically, this work. So these are impossible proposals. Occasionally, I would joke when I show a whole collection of this work on PowerPoint. Say, well, this is what London will look like when I'm king, you know. But this project came out of failure. I won a big award, and this was back in 2000, and I thought, I've arrived, you know what I mean? Everybody's gonna think you're wonderful, you're a genius, Hew. I had a wake-up call about that, you know. Anyway, so I went to see a big arts organization and to get backing for this project. And they turned me down out of hand. And rejection is a tough thing, right? Rejection is something as an artist, you got to learn to make your peace with. And out of this rejection came a whole body of work. Like I've been working for the last 20 years on 20 odd years on that rejection, basically. And so the rejection has taken me all over the place, all over the world, to be honest with you. The rejected body of work has been to Singapore, it's been all over the place. And you got to learn to make peace with that kind of thing, you know, to me.
Mm. So, and I think your next one, you're going to go on to the statue, the very now incredibly
Yes,
noted statue.
yes. So the man of the problem. This guy's been a problem in Bristol for a long time. And this is Colston, Edward Colston, the statue which was toppled in Bristol. So I did this piece in 2006 for a show in Bristol. And what you're looking at here is a 6x4 foot photograph mounted in aluminium and then mounted on wood. And all the objects are screwed to the thing. So it's a bit like the kind of things you get on flamenco dancer postcards in Spain, where you have a dress stuck onto a postcard. So it's pretty much that kind of idea. So he's covered in cowrie shells because the cowrie shells were used in the slave trade. He's covered in cheap gold trinkets, you know, basically replicating the gold and stuff like that. There's a heraldic lion there poking out the bottom, just who he was depicting who he was operating for, you know. And back in the late 80s, I was driving with a friend through Bristol, and I'd forgotten this, and he reminded me. I said, you know, this statue should go, you know. And it went, and I'm amazed that it went, you know.
Yeah, and now last night it was replaced by the statue of a black woman by Mark Quinn. Did you hear?
Yes, I have a lot of problems with that.
I know. Well, it's interesting because we were just sort of touched on it yesterday. The fact that it was very powerful, that there was nothing on the plinth, and all of the kind of placards and messages scattered around it were so powerful as a sign of community coming together and collective effort. And suddenly now somebody else's statue has gone up there, albeit of a black woman who was part of the protest.
Yes, but then it's for me it's very problematic. I find it very problematic. I mean, I've done a number of public art pieces myself, and there's a consultancy with it. There's getting local people on board and stuff like that. But then I don't know the full story of this. But I mean, for me, I have a lot of problems with that. You know.
Anyway, let's move on to your next work. So what have we got next?
Yes. Okay, so what we're going through now is a nightmare kind of crisis, right? This was the previous nightmare crisis. In fact, my whole career seems to be one crisis after another. And but I mean, the standard thing as artists, you live through these things. Nothing as catastrophic as what we're living through now, that's for sure. So this was at a time in 2008. I was doing an exhibition I was in an exhibition in New York, and I woke up one morning and Lehman Brothers, the major financial institution, they'd closed, they'd gone bust. And then the whole financial crash happened and the whole banking crisis happened. I came back to London and I was panicking because the art world had disappeared overnight. It's just gone, vanished. And I was like, what do you do? And I had a meeting with an economist. What are you going to do now? And I had an inkling of an idea. And this is what came out of it. I decided I would invest in dead companies. I would buy shares and make work about dead companies. And that's what this is. So the one on the left is a railway being built by the Spanish government. And then there was in Cuba. And then there's a Cuban War of Independence. And 6 years after they invested all this money, the Spanish are booted out. And all that massive amount of money they invest in the railway is gone. The one on the left is a Chinese imperial government gold bond. It's drawn on HSBC Bank, which I find completely fascinating. And the map of Africa on top is that things that if you told somebody in the government at that time that, look, in 100 years' time, things will be so different that you will be a major player in Africa, you know, put building schemes and road building and stuff like that. That would have seemed extraordinary. In other words, I find history fascinating, how things move on and change, you know.
And that's what all of your work is about, isn't it? Kind of deconstructing and reconstructing history and looking through the complicated layers. And your work is complicated. It's not trying to kind of smooth over the difficult.
No, I'm not trying to smooth over cracks. It is a complex thing because that's how I see things. And I wish I could see things less complicated, you know, maybe because it make life easier. By the way, one reason I got into these is because I fell in love with them. And I became a sort of a sheer old Bond kind of geek, you know, buying these things. And I'm the one person out there buying this stuff. So
Should we move on to the next one? Because I think we haven't got a huge amount more time left.
Yeah.
So this is a much more recent piece.
Much more recent one. This is a Greek government bond. And this is referring to the refugee crisis, but making an analogy to the refugee crisis of 1924, when Greece and Turkey split apart, and they were